Hello, welcome to this next Marvelous Designer tutorial. We're going to do a leather skirt here, and if we have time we'll perhaps put a top on it as well. So let's go find an avatar to work with. So I'm going to use my GA avatar, and I've turned the skin texture off for the sake of decency, don't want to corrupt any minds. So what do we want to do first? So I want a waistband on this. So let's go to our basic circumference measure. I'm going to get front on, and then I'm going to draw somewhere around the centre and press shift to constrain my movement and move out to the side, and then I'm just going to give it a tiny little angle. And now I want one for underneath that. So click in the middle, move out a little bit with shift held, move around the side, and I'll get it approximately equal. There we go. It's a little bit thinner at the back than it is at the front, so perhaps I'll undo that and try that again. Somewhere around there, I think. I don't think I'll ever get it perfect, but you know, we try. Okay, so our top measure, if I go to the edit measure, is 740 millimeters, and our bottom measure is 803. So we're going to have to go sort of somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to use the square tool or the rectangle tool and just left click in the viewport. Let's do that again. So rectangle, left click in the viewport, and I'm going to go back to 775. Let's make it 40 deep, and then click OK. And now if I select our piece, press shift F to get my arrangement points up, I can arrange it in place, shift F to turn them off again, and then under the measures we'll attach to measure the top one, whoops, that didn't work, the top one on the pattern to the top one on the avatar, and then the same for the bottom, and then we'll sew up the ends and press space. There we go. So yeah, I can see that the offset distance is a little far, so I'll double click on the avatar and I'll just take that down to 1 for now. There we go, so it's a little closer. Okay, so that's our waistband, and now I want to put some panels on this. So I'm going to end up with 4 panels, but to start with I'm going to make 6. You'll see why in just a second. It's going to make sewing easier. So if I right click on the bottom and split, and then we'll have a uniform split, and I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what I want is 1 panel at the front, 1 panel at the back, and 1 at each side. But for this, you know, when I what's the word I'm looking for? To make sewing easier, I'm just going to make 6 patterns, and then I'll join some together. So it's 129.2, so we'll create a rectangle of 129.2. Let's make it about 300 deep, and then click OK, and I'll just move that into place. Okay, so I want a few copies of this, and I don't want to have to repeat that, so if I select this pattern and hit Control and C, and then Control V, but instead of left clicking to put it down, I'm going to right click, and then it will give me a chance to just up my number of shapes. So now I've got the right number of shapes, and now if I select all of those shapes and use shift and F to get my arrangement points up, I can arrange them all around our avatar, and then shift F to turn them off because they're annoying, and then I'll just drop that down, and now we can sew them up. So let's use the 3D view. So segment sewing, I want that one to there, that one to there, that one to there, and so on and so forth. Whoops, that one went on backwards. That's because that's not where it needs to go. There we go. Okay, so let's press space. Oops, I missed one. I knew I'd miss one. It's always the way. You try, but it just doesn't work. There we go. So now we have a kind of a, well, almost Roman soldier-esque kind of thing with much thicker panels. So what I want to do first is just join up a couple of these. So if I go to the edit pattern tool, if I select these two, right click and merge, that will make me one on the front, and then if I do the same for the back, I want this side and this side, so I'll select that one and that one, right click and merge again. See, that just saved me a whole bunch of trying to figure out how to sew one pattern across two ends of a waistband, which is what I wanted. Okay, so you'll notice that there's some gaps between these, and this is why I've made it in panels, because we're going to expand these to make this fit a little nicer. So we'll do that in the next section, and I'll talk to you then. Right, let me just have a look around here. Just want to see that this edge is sort of somewhere in the middle, which it is. Great. And now I'm just going to spread these out a little bit so I've got room to adjust. So what I want to do is bring these points closer together, and I want to do it on all of them at the same time. So what I'm going to do is select one point on each corner, the same corner, and I'm going to use my keyboard arrow key just to move that out until in the viewport I've got it somewhere near the middle. So I believe I've moved it 4 times now, so I'm going to move it a 5th time. Whoops. Need to be pointing in the 2D window for that. There we go. And then I'll do exactly the same on the other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as you can see, they're very close together now, which is perfect. So now if I go about sewing these together, there we go, it should all come together quite nicely. Now I might have overdone it a little bit, which is not unusual for me, so I'm just going to back that off a little bit. So I'll just select one corner and just bring those in, 2 clicks, and then we'll do the same on the other side. 1, 2. There we go, that's better. So now we have a nicer kind of fit. Because we've adjusted those pattern pieces, it's filled in a lot of gap, and you know that gap previously would have just closed up. It would have sucked up the panels from each side, and that would have caused some stretching on the mesh, and you know subsequently some stretching on the UV. So you know I like to fill those gaps in so that it fits a little better, because obviously the figure isn't a square all the way down. There's a taper, and you have to account for that sometimes. Okay, so what we do have is some kind of odd how can I put it, angles here, so we can adjust for those using our curve tool. And if I just look here, if I put a very tiny curve in this side panel, you'll see that that kind of flattens out a little bit and makes for a smoother transition between the pattern pieces. Okay, this on the back is, again, it's kind of bowed, so for that one I'm going to take out this middle piece and use my edit curvature just to pop a teeny tiny bit of curve in it, and that will make that line longer and reduce stretch and give me a straighter line. The front's not too bad, so I'm going to leave that as it is. Okay, so that's the basic pattern of this skirt, and I think we'll probably come in and put some details in to make it look a bit, you know, more interesting. So I shall talk to you then. Okay, so let's do some detailing. Now, it might come as a slight surprise to you, but this isn't the skirt, and I won't be exporting these patterns. What I'm going to do is move them down and then freeze, and then I'm going to copy them. So if I copy and paste over the top of them, they'll be in about the right area in 3D space, and then I'll move them up. I'm going to set layer to 1, and these ones I will unfreeze. Now what I want to do is use these to make a more realistic kind of garment, because at the moment everything is a little bit, how can I put it, everything is a little bit flat, and you know, as you know, cloth doesn't, kind of work like that. So at the moment it's sewn to itself, and I don't want it sewn to itself, I want it sewn to whatever's underneath it. So let us go to edit sewing. I want to select all of these sewn pieces across the middle. There we go. Actually I want them all not just the ones across the middle. So let's select those and delete them, and then I'm going to sew it back to itself. So with segment sewing, I'm just going to go through each pattern and sew it back to the pattern I copied it from. So I'm just going to do the sides first because they're kind of sequential, it makes sense to my brain, and then I'll do the hems. There we go. Whoops, one more there, and then the tops. Okay, so did I set the pattern layer? I did, and probably didn't mention it. So I've set them all a different pattern layer to the one below, one above it, so that it will stay on top. And just for the waistline, I'm going to sew that back to itself as well. Nearly there. There we go. Now when I press space, that will come on there, and it looks, more or less identical. It's not really fitting very well up here, but we'll deal with that in a few minutes. Now it's got a little bit more to it. There's a little bit of kind of something going on at the hems, but what we can do is, if we select all of our pieces here and look at the shrinkage weft and the shrinkage warp, what we can do is change these numbers. So if I change that to 105 for example, you'll see I'm now starting to get some folds, because these lines now are longer than these lines, and because they're longer, it's starting to wrinkle up. So I have a feeling I've done the wrong one here, so let's put that one to there and that one to there, and there we go. You can get a little bit around the back, or we could do both, of course. So 105 might be a little much, so let's take that down a little bit. There we go, and press space. Oops, did I press space such that it doesn't sim? Yes, I think I probably did. Okay, this one up here is going to be a little bit of a pain because it's quite tight and stretched. So I'm just going to give that a little bit of extra material to let it go. That's too much, and that's not enough, because you know the material thing, if I put too much in it, you know, it will basically cause me a bit of grief. What I can do is give it some geometry without changing its size. So if I select this top line and these bottom lines and right click and offset as internal line, just a very small offset of 1 millimeter, I'll give it perhaps 2 to help it out, and then press space, and there we go. Now it's got enough geometry to pop out and do what it wants to do. Okay, so these folds are essentially not all that impressive. So what I'm actually going to do is increase the pattern distance on this, or the particle distance, or decrease it rather to increase the geometry. So if I pop that to 15 and let it sim, I will start to get tighter, what we're trying to say, folds and wrinkles. And if I go down even further, it will gradually resolve more into, you know, finer wrinkles. And of course you can pull it around and do what you want to do to, you know, get it to work the way you want to work. And we're even getting a little bit of a curve around the bottom, which is quite nice. I'm going to adjust here just to see what happens. Yeah, I get these mixed up quite a lot, so I believe that the weft is left to right, so I actually want this to be up and down. Ooh. Thought I'd messed up there, so let's do up and down to 104 and see what we get. So we're at least getting some, you know, nicer wrinkles here, which are, you know, it's definitely preferable to no wrinkles at all. That is for sure. And you know, one of the benefits of sewing it to the pattern underneath is now I'm getting a much more definite seam here at each of these edges, and I'm just going to enhance that by selecting each of our pieces here, each of our vertical seams on the skirt pieces, and I'm going to offset these as internal lines. And I think actually I might do the bottoms as well, because that will help tighten that up. I think I moved some of there. I did. There we go. Okay, so select all those, right click, offset as internal line, 1 millimeter and 2, make sure extend is on, and click OK. And now when I press space, they should tighten up even more to give me a nice tight seam, you know, for, you know, when I export it to something else, that seam will be much more visible than it is, or would have been currently. It was a little bit loose and floppy. Okay, so that's that bit essentially for detailing. In the next bit we might have a look at adjusting our material settings to, you know, make this look a little bit more yeah, even stiffer than it actually is. Okay, so I'll talk to you then. Okay, so I realise between videos that I should have put an internal line up here as well. See this puffiness? That could be sorted with that little offset internal line. So I'm going to select across the top there and just pop that in. So offset this internal line, 1 millimeter, 2 iterations, and then when I press space, that should improve a bit. Might have to pull it about a bit to get it to behave, but yes. And that's provided us that nice sort of seam between the waistband and, you know, the rest of the skirt. There we go. Right, so I'm on the default fabric at the minute, so for these ones I want to update them. I might as well not really mess about too much and just update them all. And in the fabrics I've just typed in leather to filter it, and we've got two essentially. We've got that trim one which is extremely stiff and is likely to flatten everything out, but we have this leather lambskin as well, or lambskin leather. So I'm going to drag and drop that onto our piece. It should get some colour properties as well. There we go. And now when I sim it, it should tighten up a little bit. If I actually sim it, there we go. So it's a little tighter than it was, a little more defined. We've still got our crease across the middle there. We've still got our lovely seams. We've got some kind of bunching down the bottom, which is quite nice. Yeah, quite happy with that really. Just having a look around, seeing if I can see anything else. I might, you know, now I've done it, just grab these and change my shrinkage weft again. Let's go nuts and make it 110. So now I'm getting even more you know, wrinkles and bits and bobs in here. Whoops, it would really help if this was simming before I did that. But at the top it's getting a little bit bunchy, which, yeah, I might be able to fix if I pull down enough, or I could put up with it. Yeah, I think 110 is a little too much, so let's come down from that to 106. There we go. You see it tightened up a little bit there. I've lost some of my creases, but some of my others are a little more enhanced. There we go. Okay, so again, when I was talking about the particle distance here, it really does make a difference. So currently we're at 10, but if you go down real small on this, you can get some really really nice wrinkles going. But obviously, you know, practically speaking, it's not that useful, because, you know, if I take this out to use anywhere else, I want to keep it relatively low, and, you know, 5 is just crazy. So you've got some very tiny wrinkles going on up here, which are very nice and look very good, but at the expense of you know, the added geometry, it's not all that fun. So there we go. Okay, so do I want to do anything else in this? I don't think I do really. I might adjust my the visual properties on it a little, so we'll do that next, and then I think we'll be done. Okay, so we've got our leather lambskin on, and that comes in with a texture, but we can change that still. So first of all, under texture, if you open up this little thing here, there's a button for desaturation, and that will take the colour out of the map, which will help us, because then we can use our colour to pop a colour back in again. So maybe it's a pink leather, pale, no, let's go for a darker bluish kind of look. I don't like to have sort of no colour in it really, to have some sort of tint if you like, and that's sort of fine as it is. If I zoom right in, we can see kind of what's going on with the normal, but you can even rather change that. So under normal map, if you open that up, we can even change how that's behaving. So you can make it more intense, you can make it less intense, you can do all sorts of things. And even under the transform, if it's too fine for you, if you lock aspect ratio and increase your number, you'll get a you know, less grainy detail. You see, this is quite bumpy at the moment, quite large bumps. If I take that down to somewhere near where it was, it should reduce down, and I wasn't really paying attention. So let's take that even lower. There we go. See, now it's really fine grain, and you know, that's a matter of your style. If you're, you know, going super real, you might keep it small. If you're going a bit more stylized, you might make it a little larger. There we go. Okay, so what else? Under reflection, we have reflection. We have our roughness. So we can either drive it by map or intensity. I haven't got a map, so I'm going to use intensity, and we can increase that, which will make it very matte indeed, or we can decrease it, which will make it very shiny indeed. Well, I think for something like this, we probably want somewhere towards the shiny end, but not so shiny that it's kind of reflecting the environment. There we go. There's a couple of other settings down here. We've got our intensity, which we can increase. Again, that will make it much more reflective, but it's still not reflecting what's around it because of our roughness. If I take that down, you'll see, you know, what's going on there. If I take that up, I think that's probably somewhere about right, actually. Now that I've increased the roughness of it, that's looking far more. Sorry, the reflectivity. I'm going to take that down just a little bit. Yeah, like that. We also have a metalness coefficient or scale, so we can make it more metallic if we want to. Don't think we do on this particular one. Okay, so that's a very simple, quick sort of leather skirt, really. Obviously you can take it much further, you can do all sorts of things with it. I would personally take this out of here and take it into Substance Painter to, you know, do a more thorough paint job. Might paint in some studs and maybe even some you know, other details. Anyway, that's that for that. I hope you found it useful. I will talk to you in another video.